RD to RD live show. My name is Megan Boitano, and I'm really excited today to have Leesa Klich joining us to talk about how to grow your blog. And this topic, I've really been inspired to improve my own blogging. And I know a lot of dietitians are bloggers, one, for monetization, and two, to bring in new clients, whether you run a private practice, you sell online courses, that blogging is a great way to bring traffic to our products and services. But it's also really, really overwhelming, the amount of steps in the process and actually getting that traffic to your blog. So Leesa is in a number of groups that I'm in as well, and I've always been blown away by her responses. You know, she's got a mind that's very strategic, and every time I read one of her responses, I'm like, oh, that makes sense, and I want to learn more. So I actually went to her website and read some of her blog posts that are targeted at, you know, health and wellness professionals, dietitians, and about how to one, write better, and then of course do a better job with blogging strategy. And I was like, I must have her on the live show. So it's kind of a little bit of the backstory of how Leesa came to be a guest on the live show. So thank you for being here today, for sharing your wisdom with the RD to RD community. I know you've done a lot to prepare, and I'm really excited that you're here. Yay. So before we kick things off, for everyone who is joining us live, I have a few poll questions that are going to come up. It's a new feature of Facebook Live that I've been testing out. So if you see a little question pop up, feel free to, you know, drop your answer in. That helps Leesa and I get a little bit of an idea of the type of listeners we have on. Secondly, we are going to be looking at questions throughout the show. So if you have a burning question already, go ahead and type it in, but I will be toggling back and forth between kind of managing the show, asking my list of questions and yours. So feel free to drop those in questions as well. So Leesa, let's go ahead and kick things off. So I'm always want a little bit of the backstory, because I don't think anyone when they're a kid says, gee, I'd like to grow up and be a blogger. You know, how did you fall into not just blogging, but you really focus on scientific writing? And how did this become a passion for you? And then did you, you know, us folks were always looking for like certifications and how do we gain expertise in this area? So just tell us a little bit about how you arrived at your current specialization.
Well, it's so funny because when I started blogging, I didn't realize that I wasn't actually speaking English to people, because all of my scientific information and my degrees and my experience in writing, which I love, like love researching and writing, it took me a while before the light bulb went off. And it's like, people aren't coming to see me because they don't know what the heck I'm talking about. I need to be writing in blog format with content marketing and easy to read. And it was just so interesting. So I kind of fell into it that way. But I've always loved the research behind it. Reading the research and hiding behind my computer and reading and writing was always my thing. I tried to be a nutritionist. I did. And I really, really wanted to like it. But I guess we try all these things, and as entrepreneurs, we have all these great ideas, and we try something, and finally we fall into something, and we're like, okay, this is, I think, a lot more comfortable for me than what I was trying to force myself into before. Oh, and how did I get into here? So, in order to learn how to write in kind of English, I actually took courses. I took courses from the Health Writer Hub, and I'm in like the Serious Bloggers Only Mastermind, and a few places where they really teach you how to speak to people in English, as I like to say, but even with the health writers, how to put like the science and the medical jargon away and actually give the right information without dumbing things down, just being clear.
Got it. I actually, that's really interesting to me, because I would say the vast majority of blogs out there don't really have a huge like scientific base to them. There's certain places you can go, whether it's Healthline or Very Well, where there's a bit more of that scientific translation. That's really interesting that I wasn't aware of those resources. So I'll try to write those down, that if people are really interested in having more of that scientific angle to their writing, that those are great resources for people. So that's
Right.
awesome to know. So I'm going to go ahead and kick out our first poll for those of you. See if I can get this to go. Publish. Okay. So just asking everyone what their blogging frequency is currently. So you can go ahead and weigh in on that poll. But let's kind of start out basic. There's a lot of steps when you're creating a blog post and promoting your content as a blogger. So it can get really overwhelming. I know personally, the writing, when I went into this process, like, yeah, I wrote a blog article, check it off the list. Well, that's like the easy part, almost. I mean, honestly, that's one small sliver of blogging. So why is having a strategy important? Like, why can't we just write a blog article and hope people find it and read it?
It's hard to get found on the internet today, to be honest. There's so many blogs out there, and having it as part of your overall content marketing strategy is how I look at it. So you have your blogs, and by blog, I don't just mean written format. For me, the way I describe a blog, or the way I think about it, is it's the part of your website that you're consistently updating with content. So other than like your about page and your home page, which you may update once in a while, your blog is regular, consistent content, and it's meant to be valuable. So when you're creating something and you're putting in an effort and you're doing your research and you're publishing it and you want this to be valuable for your ideal clients, right? Like you want them to find you, you want them to get value from it, and it help build your know, like, trust factor in your business. So you got to get it out there. And now more than ever, promoting what you have is so important. So by having a bit of a strategy behind it, it's kind of like a well thought through plan. You can actually focus on certain strategy instead of being overwhelmed with everything there is to do. So I pulled up a quote from Robin Sharma, who's one of my favorite people. And something that really, really applies to this is stop managing your time and start managing your focus. So there are 500 things that as entrepreneurs and health professionals we need to do like every day. And we have a never-ending list and all these ideas. But when you come and kind of simmer it down into a well thought through plan, you can focus on certain things that you want to try or that kind of resonate with you. And then over time, you can always change it depending on how it's working for you. But the idea is you can't do everything well. And you don't have to do everything yourself either. So sometimes getting help with things, and you'll see one of the graphics that I made today, I did it myself, so it's not awesome. I'm not a great graphics designer. But you just try and do things and you focus in on what works well for you, and then you don't have to scatter your efforts like everywhere.
So if we understand that we kind of have to have a strategy for blogging. One of your blog posts that I read that I think really was kind of what I use as a jumping off point for one, prepping my question list, and two, bringing people in of why you want to come to this live show today and what you're going to get out of it, is that you don't have to come up with brand new from scratch blog post every time, nor do you have to have separate strategies for blogging, your newsletter, social media. You can have one smooth and super efficient process for it all. So let's start a little bit big, and then we'll maybe get into that graphic that you made in a little bit more granular. What does that look like to say, okay, that sounds good, but what does that actually mean in practice?
In practice, it is, for example, the first part of not coming up with something every time is when you have your niche and you might have a few keywords, you may have some ideal client market research in the back of your head. That's what you aim your content, your blog content towards. And once you have a few good pieces and it's been several months, for example, even a year or more since you've published something, look back at everything you've published that's a year or more old and see if you can just update it. Like, take something and maybe there's new research, or maybe you have new branding. Add internal links, so links from other blog posts you've written since then, and then republish it as a new post. It's really great to have that because it helps have a consistent message across all your platforms. And it's good to keep your information up to date, because you never know where somebody's going to land on your blog. And then when you have your blog, um, I use mine as a kind of a foundation for my whole content marketing strategy. So once I have a blog post, I then kind of flow it around through, my newsletter and my social media and search engines, and I do all of these things with it using my blog as the foundation of my content. Because to be honest, I own my website. Like, it's my intellectual property. I pay for it. I own it. So I like to keep the biggest and best parts of my content like on my property, as opposed to having it in various scattered through, social media feeds and newsletters that go out, etc.
So that people to get the best have to come back to your website to see it.
They come back to my website, and it links to other blog posts as well.
Right.
So once they're there, they can go and say, oh, well, Leesa looks at this, and Megan does this as well, and here's some references to back up what I'm saying. So it can be as simple and as complex as you want it to be, but I would always recommend starting at the beginning and simple.
Yes. So I think you said a couple of things that were important there, which was your target, your avatar, who am I writing for? And then you mentioned keywords. We have had a couple of live shows on how to kind of come up with those keywords. So I won't spend a ton of time on that today, but that, I've really changed from my focus being writing something that's, I don't know, interesting for me and that I think would interest my target customers, to writing something that I know that I can rank for that is also interesting for my target customers, because they're never going to see it if I don't write it so that Google will find it. Unless, of course, maybe people have 50,000 Instagram followers. There's certainly different ways to do things, but keywords allow you to, look at Google. So we won't go into a huge amount of focus there, but we said keywords. So what are the benefits of really, so let's say we're focusing in on a specific keyword. Let's say, for example, I've been targeting the keyword picky eating. Why do you want to have multiple posts aimed at that specific keyword? Is that good? Is it bad? How does that work from bringing in people to your website?
It can work if you do it right, and that's part of where the strategy comes in, because what you want to do is keep in the back of your mind always is you never want to compete with yourself for the exact same keyword. So whatever keyword you have, like picky eaters, is going to be a very specific keyword, and you want one post that's really, really, really great that ranks for that, for example. But other blog posts could be, picky eaters for dairy-free kids, or it could be kind of those longer tail keywords, and they would all be kind of around that post, all be linking back to that post using a non-synonym, like a slightly different keyword for it. So that is one way that you can literally come up with dozens of blog post ideas from one main topic, and they all link to each other, and then your authority grows in that one area, and then you can move up through Google if you wanted to strategically do your blog posts that way.
Yes. Oftentimes it's easier to rank for things that are a little bit more specific. Picky eating 3-year-old, is easier to rank for than just picky eating. But you can see that it is searched for picky eating 2-year-old, picky eating 6-year-old, writing specific blog posts that have a lot of the same content, but are just a little bit more targeted.
Right, absolutely.
And then they could all link back to perhaps your main article, and maybe have strategies or myths or tips or, 5 meals. I mean, you can go on and on and on. So really kind of creating that web, right? I've been thinking of it kind of as a web. So when they're searching, they kind of get caught, and then they can click through to other content on your blog and on your website.
Exactly.
So you just got to catch them in the web. So let's kind of play the... I was talking here about, I've heard, well, you don't want to compete with yourself. So what does that really mean? So if you have, how do you know? Like, how would I know if I'm competing with myself on a specific keyword?
Well, there is software that you can run to see which keywords you're ranking for on your website. But also, I mean, there's kind of an art and a science to keyword research. You can get all the scientific information, the exact numbers from your software. But really, if the kind of the art behind it is they're both synonyms, or your target market uses those two exact words to find the same thing, then you probably want to change it up just a little bit. So synonyms you don't want to compete with, but adding longer tail keywords is 100% a great strategy.
Correct. Okay. And then totally different words as well. Like toddler won't eat is very different than picky eating, but there's two search terms that are, very valuable because they might be used.
Right. And if they're both for your ideal client, then by all means, try to grab all of them.
Exactly. Toddler won't eat meat. So some of these, like going in and spending a little bit of time in Google, or even some of the free or paid tools, Neil Patel's new Uber Suggest is super helpful. Also use trials of SEM, Rush, or Key Search. There's other tools that allow you to do some keyword research. So I published another poll that is asking people if they currently do any keyword research prior to writing their blog posts. But do you want to go and kind of give an overview of the graphic you were working on, or do you want to keep working through questions at all?
What this graphic shows is kind of the whole flow of all of the content starting from the blog.
So I'm going to let you share your screen, okay, and then you will be in charge here. Should be good.
Can you see it? Okay, cool. So all right, so how I see the blog, and again, it's just the regular content that you create, is kind of in the middle of the wheel, but it's kind of a square wheel. And how I put it in 4 different quadrants. So it's kind of like a 2x2. So on the left side, you have paid traffic, for example, and on the right is the unpaid. In the top are people who know you, and at the bottom, people who don't know you. And all of those are individual strategies that you can use, starting with content that you put on your blog. So once you have your blog, which is right in the middle, I would always recommend that even if you are a beginner, that you have a newsletter. So it's really important to have people on your email list. It's been shown time and time again in studies that it is a much higher conversion than any of the other forms of content marketing. So definitely have a newsletter. And then, of course, once you've published your blog post, you will send a link through your newsletter. Now, your newsletter, of course, are people who know you. Like your blog could be people who know you and who don't know you, but your newsletter you want to be a little more personal with. So give them more personal introduction, maybe a little bit of a background, how you came to that blog topic or something. And, oh, sorry, were you going to say something?
No.
Nope. And then you would also add more things in your newsletters that are special for your subscribers. So you would add maybe some special tips or heads up on special offers that are coming their way, whatever. So your blog is going to be part of your newsletter content, but it's not going to be all of it. It's going to be flow into that strategy to start your newsletter for that week. So those are the 2 key components that I recommend starting with. Now, the other 3 are all kind of optional. You pick 1 or 2 or all of them if you can for the rest of your content marketing. So the next quadrant over is social media. So this is very common. It's very popular. Most people love spending time on social media. So this is a no-brainer starting point for many, many online entrepreneurs. So once you have your blog post, you then want to share it on social media. Now, we know that organic reach on social media has gone down to very, very small numbers. So when you're looking at the social media, the unpaid social media, you want to put things out there more frequently than just once. Number 1 tip from me is once you publish your blog post, schedule your newsletter, but also a bunch of social media posts. My personal strategy is to schedule 9 posts to go out through the course of an entire year.
Ooh.
If that blog Sorry?
Ooh, so let's say that again. So you are writing your blog post,
yep,
and when you're finished with it, you schedule 9.
9.
And you schedule them to go out over the course of a year.
Yes.
Okay.
So I do 9 individual posts.
Are they the same? like
No,
verbiage?
it's not one post going out 9 times. It's 9 posts. And this for me, I use for Facebook and Twitter, but I am inspired to start doing this for Pinterest as well. So that is kind of cool. But the days I send mine out, and you can make a note of this because this is my strategy. I send it out on social media, on Twitter and Facebook on day 0, so the day I publish, and then on day 3 and day 7. So it literally goes out to my social media followers on both platforms 3 times in the first week.
Okay.
Again on day 14, which is 2 weeks later, or another week later, and then again on day 30. So right now you have 5 times in the first month. So days 0, 3, 7, 14, and 30 in the first month.
Okay.
After that, I wait 2 months. So another one goes out on day 90. And then every 90 days after that. And you can go do that like forever. Once you have your content. Of course, this wouldn't apply to blog posts that are going to expire, like your holiday gift guide, for example. But when it comes to evergreen content, and you know that your information is going to be valuable for your followers for a year from now, schedule them out. And then another part of your strategy is to, after a year, look at that blog post again and see, can I update it? Is there anything else I can add or subtract or whatever? And then redo it through this whole process again.
Got it. So then update your post and just add new links, because you've probably created a bunch of new articles that are awesome and you should be linking to them. Okay. Check out keyword research maybe again to see if you need to tweak it. Right. Okay, got it. That's really smart there. Okay.
That's a big part of the strategy.
Got it. Okay, so what about, you mentioned, I think one of the struggles is, of course, Instagram. Do you put your posts out on Instagram?
I used to. I don't anymore. I am not that Instagram savvy. But I know a lot of people know a lot more about that than I do. So I don't do
You
that.
mentioned, I want to go back to the newsletter quadrant there, because you mentioned weekly. As far as, should you be doing your newsletter as often as you're blogging, or weekly regardless? Do you have a best, practice recommendation there?
There really isn't a hard and fast rule. I've seen people do all kinds of things. If you're going to publish weekly, then having a weekly newsletter works well. Some people who are really advanced in content marketing, they'll publish every day or 3 or 4 times a week, and they will send you one newsletter. Some of them even give you options. Click here if you want to hear from me once a week, and click here if you want. So it's really, again, as an online entrepreneur, try things out, see how it goes, get feedback from your ideal clients and the people on your list, and see what they think. For me, I do, the standard 1 blog a week and then a newsletter follow-up.
Got it. Okay, that was really helpful. So we were talking about, we've kind of covered the, I guess, know you component, and then people who don't know you there on the bottom, and then kind of paid and unpaid. So let's kind of, I guess we can continue on with the graphic, and then we'll come back to the question list. Sound good?
Okay, cool. So I'll quickly go through the bottom 2, which are the people who don't know you. So when you go through search engines, that is your keyword strategy and your SEO optimization to get people from who are Googling those keywords to find your website. So again, you have the arrows going from your blog to the search engine, and then from the search engine back to your blog. So all of those first 3 strategies with the green arrows, they literally start from your blog, go through to the newsletter, social media, search engine, and go back to your blog. Now, paid ads, of course, can be different. You can create a separate ad, and you can have it go to a landing page, in which case it's not going to involve your blog at all. But if you do have a blog post that's doing well on Facebook or Pinterest or Twitter, you can always boost it and get more traffic back to your website as well. So this is kind of an overall content marketing strategy, but really when you're starting out with a blog, definitely start with your newsletter and then do 1 or 2 of the other three and try it and see what works for you, especially if something resonates with you. I find that when you're doing something you love to do and you really enjoy it's just, you put so much more effort into it. It just feels so much more natural and enthusiastic.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's really good advice, that you can't do, everything super well. And I think that, the search engines, really focusing on SEO or really focusing on social media, it can feel really overwhelming, I think, to try to do all of it, and maybe just picking, I'm really going to put a ton of effort into search engine, optimization and keyword research. And I'm going to put things out on social media, but maybe it won't be my core, because then once the search engine optimization becomes easy, it's less, I think, taxing mentally, and your process feels better. And then you can kind of keep adding in each new element, and you don't feel so overwhelmed. You're not catatonic, stuck in, I can't write a blog post because this is too much. I can't do it.
It's so funny. I was thinking about search engine like your slow cooker.
Yeah,
Like you put in all the effort up front. You're chopping the vegetables and you're getting everything together and you're putting it all in. And then you kind of turn it on and you wait. And it could be weeks and it could be months. But then eventually you will end up with some nice traffic. And it's warm traffic. It's people who are literally looking for what you have.
correct.
Social media, I find, is like a stir fry, right? Like you're chopping the vegetables and then you're frying the meat or the protein, and then you're taking it out, and then you're putting it, and you're standing over the stove the whole time, constantly putting in. You still end up with an awesome dinner, but it's just a lot more regular, recurring work
Right.
rather than search engines, which I find are upfront.
Yes. All right. So we'll flip out of this. We can always come back to the here. Okay. I'm going to switch back over to oopsies. Sorry, everyone. Let's see. Okay. All right, so that was really helpful. Thank you so much for creating that graphic one and kind of walking us through it. So inviting anyone who's on, if you have any questions about that graphic, we can go back to it, or tell us which one, kind of stood out to you as far as kind of a concept from that graphic that maybe you found useful. Okay, so let's say, assuming that, people listening in are kind of, using a strategy that's more of, I'm kind of creating an individual topic, not really multiple things within the same, keyword. They're not really kind of creating that web where you can link between articles. What are the first kind of 2 to 3 things that you would recommend that they do to start moving in the right direction?
The first thing is kind of the whole niching, branding, being on target with your target market. And again, I started as a nutritionist. I ended up here. So we're all evolving, right? So once you're clear on that, and what I would do is start looking at your older blog posts and then updating them accordingly. So looking at how you can rewrite it and tweak it and republish it, and then go through that whole process again, kind of the newsletter, social media, and start refining your image, or refining your brand positioning. I think that another reason why this works really well is because I don't know the latest numbers, but market research was saying at one point that you need to be in front of somebody like 7 times before they'll end up buying from you. So by using, you can use your one blog post and create more than 7 touch points from it, and then you have consistent messaging, and you're linking within the posts, and you have social media if you do that, and newsletter, etc. So I would definitely start by looking at what you already have, what's already done.
Got it. Okay. And if, let's say, you're not quite, you're not really blogging consistently, you don't really have a lot of content, what would be the first couple of things you should do to kind of, not be, I guess, I don't want to say wasting your time, but really doing the right things as you're going to start, today I'm going to start blogging consistently once a week. What advice do you have?
If you're starting out, the easiest thing to do is to start answering questions from your audience. So what are people emailing you? What are they asking? What comments are you seeing? What can you help people with? And to start there, and don't even worry right away about like the search engines and SEO and paid advertising. Be helpful, be valuable, provide good content. Because really the whole point behind your blog or vlog or podcast or whatever is to grow that know, like, and trust factor. So you want people to get to know you, by promoting, and then they read your blog and then they like you because you're showing them that you're an expert and you're answering their questions, and then they trust you enough to join your newsletter.
Got it.
And then that is kind of the flow for starting out, I would say.
Okay, got it. Very good. So we've been talking a lot about, I think, the blogging process, but we talked a little bit about newsletter and social media. Can you give a little bit more detail? We talked about scheduling the 0, 3, 14 for the first year for each blog post, but how do you, I guess, it feels like one more thing, right? It's okay, now I've got to write a newsletter and now I've got to create all these social media. So if we go back to this strategy that you were talking about of 9 times in the first year, I'm always like, my mind's like, oh, that's going to take like 5 hours to schedule all these posts. If you're writing a unique caption for each of them, are you switching up the graphic? How do you actually make that happen?
I have been doing this for a while, and my process, I can get that all done in 30 minutes. And part of it is having a newsletter template.
Okay.
So you have, I don't start a newsletter from scratch every time. I literally go back to my last one and I update it. And then there you go, you include the link and you have that. When it comes to social media, as soon as I have my newsletter scheduled to go out first thing the next morning, the blog post is still fresh in your mind. Like, you've just published it. So I go to a social media scheduler and I use one that literally takes excerpts from my blog post and it pulls hashtags and it pulls images and it gives me a template to work with. So then all I need to do is choose, my favorite 9 excerpts, my top 3 hashtags, and alternate the images, right? So there's one image on day 0 and maybe a different one on day 3, etc. And that's how it works. I mean, you could use any social media platform to schedule these in advance. But there's a few that actually pull excerpts out, and it just makes it's just that much less you have to do.
Which tool are you using? You don't mind me asking?
I'm using Missing Letter.
Missing Letter? That's not one I've heard of.
Right. It's the last E is missing. So it's MISSINGLETTER.
Missing Letter.
Right. And it literally pulls out excerpts and images and hashtags, and all I need to do is go in and choose my top 9, and then it schedules them for me, Facebook and Twitter, and I hit save and I pick my start date and it just does it.
Okay.
Which again is part of my social media strategy. I mean, your whole social media strategy isn't just pumping out blog posts, right? Like, you want to be social as well, but that's my blog post part of my social media strategy.
Got it. Okay. That is, having a scheduler, I think, you can definitely do it without, but it's a whole, definitely makes it easier when you can use a scheduling tool. But, you technically could schedule at least the Facebook elements, but I don't know that you can schedule directly in Twitter. I've never done such a thing.
Yeah, actually, I don't know either. I always use my tools, right?
I'm not a guru on Twitter. It's not really my platform. So I noticed in your blog posts you had the click to tweet, and I know that isn't something that everybody has in their blog posts. I was curious about how valuable is that kind of a must do, or at what point would you say, yeah, you should add in click to tweet in your blogs?
I would say it's totally optional, and if people are there, if you're active on a platform, then definitely using that would be helpful. The one reason why I like it is not just for the Twitter aspect, it's because it breaks up the visual of my blogs. So my blogs tend to be quite in-depth and long. And now, the latest research says you should be having an image every 350 words. Like, it's a very image heavy. So I don't do that. Instead, I try to put like a click to tweet
Got
at
it.
the end of every other subsection
Huh.
with like a key point.
Oh, that's a
there.
great idea.
So it's not necessarily specifically social media. It also breaks up.
Got it.
Makes it easier to read online.
That's actually a really good point. Do you use a plugin? Well, I guess I'm going to get too technical, but there are different tools you can use that add the ability to put click to tweet.
Right.
Okay. Now, maybe I don't know if sometimes it helps, I think, to see a blog post and kind of walk through, the structure of the post and kind of talk about perhaps, I don't know, whether you want to pull up one of your own blog posts and kind of walk through the keyword that you use, perhaps like see the little click to tweets and maybe kind of do a few talking points of how you've perhaps put that out on social media in various areas. Do you think that would be helpful?
Sure, I can
I don't
do
know
that.
if you
And so
have.
I just found the one that you mentioned before. So I'll share my screen if you want. I can do a quick run through of that and you can see what it looks like.
Okay.
So this is the one.
Yeah.
Maximize health content. So I will be 100% honest. I did not SEO optimize this post, and I don't SEO optimize all of them.
Got it.
Sometimes I am answering a question from somebody or I have an inspiration, and that's fine because you don't always have to be the same. It's kind of nice to mix things up. So what I have here is I have the image, and then I personally like table of contents just because my posts tend to be long, so it's easy to just click and go right to a subsection.
Okay.
And you can see one reason why I like this is that I've republished it.
Got it.
So I live by the don't create from scratch every single week. Just publish it and then update it with even more awesomeness, or however you want to say.
That's actually a really good tip. Like maybe, once you have a lot of content, maybe every other week for a while, going back so you can catch up on updating. Because I don't know, I've gone back to my old blog posts and I'm like, oh, they're horrible. Because you keep learning, you keep getting better, right? They don't really reflect your voice, or they don't have a Pinterest graphic. There's all sorts of stuff. Links. Right. There are too many long blocks of text. I mean, there's a million things you could do. They don't have any little quotes pulled out. There's all kinds of stuff. So you made a good point there.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to delete some old posts.
Yeah.
I have a ton of mine I went through recently, and I was afraid to delete them, so I just flipped them all to draft so they don't show up anymore. Because you want to be, when people land on your blog, you don't know where they're going to land. You don't know how they're going to find you or what link they took or whatever. So you want to be clear and consistent and on your messaging. Okay. So I throw up the image, and then, you want to have short paragraphs, short words. Don't write a technical paper. Internal links are important. Okay. So internal link means it's a link back to another post that you have. Thank you. Absolutely. Yes. To one of your posts. And then, numbers. I have more internal links.
Okay.
Here's the click to tweet. So you can see how I like to put it at the bottom of the section. And it just helps to kind of break it up for the eyes. And more internal links. Internal links also help you with SEO.
Okay, yes. And I noticed, I think that visual of people aren't going to read your blog posts from top to bottom. And it's not that they don't like you, it's just that they're going to scan. So I think as I was scanning that post, those big headings, how to list building machine. I might be in a list building mode where that might catch my attention and I might read that section. But I think you've done a great job in this post of keeping your paragraphs really, really short. I think when you're writing it's not like technical writing where, there aren't 3 sentences, so this isn't a legit paragraph. So you got to write, you need to, be friendly for how people are going to be scanning and consuming your content online, especially on mobile, because even 2 sentences looks like a giant block of text on a mobile device.
I totally agree. And then, make sure, another tip, your blog posts should have your calls to action. And to make it a list building machine, make sure you have some opt-ins. It doesn't even always have to be at the end. If you have a really long post, throw one in the middle. Okay. It's another tip. And there's also external links too. I believe this is an external link.
Okay.
Right. So this was from a Medium article on SEO and duplicate content.
Right.
So, and then the conclusion.
Okay.
And another opt-in at the bottom.
Okay. So you're giving people don't forget to include, a call to action in your post, right? Tell people how they can get more information from you.
Exactly.
Okay. So then you would take this post and you would create your 9 social media posts, Twitter, Facebook, for that first year. And that's actually, it will pull out maybe some of those little click to tweets or for you, and then you'll schedule them out.
Exactly.
Okay. That's really, be interesting. So I know as a blogger, like I want to wrap up here. We're getting close on time. That, you see a lot of mistakes, I'm sure, that other people are making as, what you see. What do you kind of feel are the biggest mistakes that you just wish you could say, stop doing that? You're just, I don't want to say shooting yourself in the foot, but just what would be the top mistakes that you see people making?
I think the number one opportunity is to share your stuff more. And it's not just my opinion. I mean, I love Content Marketing Institute, and they're like, whatever time you spend creating content, you need to spend at least as much time promoting it. There are people who are really, really ranking well, and they have tons of followers, and they're on the first page of Google and everything. They literally have a couple dozen posts, but they're so good that they're ranking for them. So you don't need to be constantly, doing small things all the time and not letting people know about it. Really getting traffic, getting your ideal clients to read or listen to or watch whatever your content is, really the onus is on you to be your own biggest cheerleader. You created this for your audience. It's not for your benefit. It's for them, and you put an effort in, and it's free. It's literally valuable content that is free for them, to help them and show them that you want to help them and you can help them. So I think that's a mindset block or something, and an opportunity that people can have is it's value that I'm giving out for free. I'm not just trying to sell you stuff.
Yeah. And I think that we're waiting for our list to get a certain size or this or that. And I recently sent out my, RD to RD newsletter, and my list was like, it's right at almost 1,000 people, which is a huge amount to me. It's not a lot too many, but I went back and I looked at my first newsletter that I sent out was 60 people. And that newsletter still took me a ton of time to make. That ultimately it's that consistency of sending a newsletter. I only do it every month. Maybe I should do it every week, but I committed to that. But, continuing, like you said, to be a cheerleader and not waiting until you don't need 100 subscribers. You don't need 200. You need 2. Like, you just have to start doing it and being consistent. And then by creating good content, the subscribers will come, the people will see you, and then you'll have more subscribers later on. Right. So I think that for me, just that waiting, I don't have enough content yet, or I don't have enough of X, Y, or Z is a huge hang up that I think people have about just doing it. Right. I'm really glad because my original stuff wasn't very good, so there's not very few people seeing it early on.
Right. That's exactly. I remember my very first blog post. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm putting it on the internet for millions of people to see. I didn't realize how hard it was to get like thousands of people to see every piece every day. Right. So it's a good, I guess we all go through the same process to kind of put ourselves out there.
Yes. So what resources do you recommend what are some good maybe blogs that you follow or groups that you're in, or where do you get a lot of awesome tips for kind of being more strategic with blogging?
I mentioned earlier Health Writer Hub.
Health Writer Hub.
Now, she has, Michelle, she's in Australia. She has a bunch of courses for professional, healthcare professionals, to get them to help communicate. So she has like copywriting and blogging, and that was really helpful for me when I'm starting out, because I felt like I was in and amongst my peers. Okay. Right, like I'm in and amongst a bunch of nerdy people who are really just trying to be able to speak English.
Right.
There's also, I'm in the John Morrow's mastermind called Serious Bloggers Only. Oh. So he is amazing. He is so good. I highly recommend him. I also have like, there's always the typical, the standard ones. There's Pro Blogger, Copy Blogger, um, Content Marketing Institute is awesome. They are really high level
Okay.
because a lot of their stuff is for like agencies,
Mm.
but they have a ton of good content. And I learned so much of how to strategize just from reading their blogs. Again, they're free, valuable content that they are promoting. It works,
Yes,
right? Yes.
contentmarketinginstitute.com. Okay. And Health Writer Hub. What was the other one? You said bloggers, serious.
Serious Bloggers Only. That's a paid
Oh,
mastermind,
okay.
but he has a blog as
Yeah,
well.
reading the blog.
Reading the blog, reading all of the bloggers are going to have blogs on blogging,
Oh,
right?
yeah. I read,
Exactly.
about selling online. I read the Shopify blog. I read Easy Digital
Right.
Downloads blog.
Oh, Easy Digital Downloads. Yeah,
I
I have
read
those.
all of the, even like HubSpot, like they make great blog
Yep.
posts.
Yep.
So, reading those can really be helpful.
Right.
Tax Jars blog. So I'm like a blog stalker. And then I think that's true, though, that if you put out content that's great, people are going to read your blog too.
Right. And you have to promote it. Make sure you're sharing it with people as well.
Yes.
Don't hide. I mean, as a writer, I love hiding behind my computer.
Right.
I love hiding, but I just got to get myself out there because
You do.
if people don't know about me, I can't help
You
them and they
can't.
can't learn, right?
That's right. So before we wrap up, I know, how can people find out more about you? What kind of tools or services do you offer for, health and wellness and bloggers? Tell us more.
Yes, I have. Well, my website is my name, leesaklich.com. Leesa
Right.
Klich. And I have a bunch of things that I love doing. I call myself a health writer, blogging expert, and a research nerd. So what I love to do is grab that research, the new studies, and write them in a way that people understand them, and then market them so people can read the good information. So I do like freelance writing, and I have some done for you products, SEO, all the blogging stuff. I love putting both hats on. So first I do the research from the content marketing or the health research, and then I do the content marketing to get the good information out there.
Oh, awesome. LeesaKlich.com for everyone. Well,
Yeah.
I've linked to it, but I'll link to it again so you can see some examples of obviously Lisa's work, and then some of her articles more tailored towards to bloggers as well. Awesome. So we'll put a link to your website and any other burning things that are on your mind before we wrap up. I'm checking here for some reason. All of my comments that I want to see, I can't see here.
Oh, no.
This is kind of bugging me a little bit, so that's okay. Anything on your mind?
I think that the biggest thing is that when you're spending the time to make something, think about it as providing value to your audience and that they can't see it if you don't tell them about it. So it's not about selling in every single blog post. It's about, building that know, like, and trust factor and helping people who are your ideal audience. Just help people. And that's the point of the blog. It's free. It's free, awesome information you're giving out on a regular basis.
Right.
So get it out.
Get it out there. It's really great. I think that, the whole point of this was really to think about your blog at the center. And I think that graphic that you showed, that your blog isn't something else that you do. And I think it changes how you write and how you create your blog. Your blog is your intellectual property, like you mentioned. It's what you own. It's on your website. It's yours. You wrote it. That everything else circles around that. So what you're putting out in your newsletter is driving people back to that awesomeness that you have on your website. And then you're putting a lot more thought into what you're blogging about, and then it's the jumping off point for, what am I going to post on social media? Well, you already know because you already blogged about it. And then if you have something that's really awesome, that's performing well, like I've had a few of my blog posts that have done well, doing some paid advertising to that, which, you already know that one is popular for people who maybe don't know you. And then that search engine optimization. So I think rather than thinking of blogging as that one other thing, it's actually putting that thought into it really is the cornerstone that then makes everything else less, I don't know, busyness, that it feels more cohesive, that putting that blog in the center rather than over here, like it's this other thing that I do.
Right, right,
I think that's
exactly.
really valuable. So for me, when I went from thinking of a blog as like an action to actually a big core of my business, that it really changed how I think of blogging. So for anyone else who's kind of listening in. So
Awesome.
we'll wrap up for everyone. We have a little bit of a hiatus with the holidays coming up here at the end of the month. So we will be back in January. We have we're transitioning into, first we're going to talk about creating newsletters for your nutrition practice. So we're going to talk specifically about kind of what to put in your newsletter. Like you mentioned, having a template. So what are kind of the components of a great newsletter? So if you're thinking, hey, in the new year, January 1 and forevermore, I'm going to send out a newsletter, it'd be a great one to tune into. So we'll have that. And then second, in January, we'll be doing a live show on kind of targeted at fitness dietitians, how to get gigs in gyms and maybe fitness studios. So that'll be a lot of fun because I often see people who say, I have this opportunity at a fitness studio. I've been approached, but it's like, what do I do? What are the steps? How do I kind of make that work? So that'll be a lot of fun. All right. Well, thank you all for joining today. Leesa, thank you so much for coming on, sharing your
Thank
wisdom.
you.
Everybody go check out Leesa's website, leesaklich.com. One, to oogle over her awesome blog post, and two, to download some of her awesome free content. So thanks again for being on the show.
Thank you so much, Megan. It was awesome.
Yeah. All right. Bye-bye, everyone.
Bye.